My husband's running app mapped every single route he had ever taken. I only opened it to add myself as a running buddy. Instead, I found a route he ran every Sunday, 6 miles, ending at a house I had never seen. Tonight, every single story is about an app and object, an ordinary Tuesday that revealed everything. Let me take you back to where each of these stories started. My name is Catherine. I am 36 years old. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and 8 months ago I discovered my husband's affair through his fitness tracking app, opening it specifically to set myself up as a running partner for what I hoped would be a fun new shared activity, finding instead, as I explored his complete route history to understand his typical patterns, a consistent Sunday morning route spanning approximately 6 miles that always concluded at a specific residential address I did not recognize as belonging to anyone we knew. My husband's name is Thomas, and we had been married for 12 years, and I want to describe the specific process of this discovery, opening this app with genuinely positive intentions, wanting to surprise Thomas by joining him for his regular runs, reviewing his historical data specifically to understand his usual routes and pacing so I could adequately prepare myself, finding instead this consistent pattern that immediately struck me as different from his other, more varied running routes. Throughout the week, I want to describe what made this specific Sunday pattern stand out from his other recorded runs, noticing that while his weekday routes varied considerably in both distance and direction, seemingly reflecting genuine exploration of different neighborhood paths, his Sunday route remained remarkably consistent across months of recorded history, always the same 6-mile distance, always concluding with what the app's mapping showed as an extended pause, sometimes lasting over an hour, at this same specific residential address before he apparently resumed running to complete his route home. I want to describe what I did once I noticed this pattern, using the app's mapping feature to identify the actual street address this route consistently concluded at, searching this address online, finding it associated with a woman's name I did not recognize, information that, combined with a consistent hour-long pause at her home every single Sunday for what the app's historical data showed was at least the preceding 6 months, began painting an increasingly clear picture I felt compelled to investigate further before raising directly with Thomas. I want to describe the confrontation that followed once I had gathered this additional context, presenting Thomas with the app's route history and what I had learned about this address, watching him move through initial attempts to explain this as simply a rest stop during his longer runs before the specific consistency and duration of these pauses, occurring at the exact same residential address every single week for 6 months, made this explanation genuinely impossible to sustain credibly. Update 4 months later. Thomas's affair, once fully acknowledged, had indeed been ongoing for approximately 6 months with this woman, their Sunday meetings disguised specifically through his genuine running hobby, using his actual athletic activity as effective cover for these regular, extended visits that I had never previously questioned given how consistent and unremarkable his general running routine had always seemed throughout our marriage. I filed for divorce within the following weeks, and I have found myself reflecting frequently on the specific, almost ironic nature of this discovery, understanding that Thomas had apparently believed his genuine athletic dedication provided sufficient cover for these regular visits, never considering that the very technology designed to track and celebrate his running achievements would ultimately document, with complete precision, exactly the pattern that revealed his entire deception. Thomas used his own running hobby as cover for 6 months, and just like Catherine found her answer in fitness data, the man in story 2 found his through something that arrived in a completely different way, a subscription renewal for a service he never signed up for. Wait, this is the part that gets me most. Here is what he found. My name is Marcus. I am 41 years old, I live in Tampa, Florida, and 7 months ago I discovered my wife's affair when I noticed an unfamiliar recurring charge on our joint credit card statement for what appeared to be a monthly subscription box service, a charge that, once I investigated further, revealed itself to be a gift subscription that someone else had been sending to our home address for over a year, paid for entirely by this other person but somehow linked, through what I eventually determined was a billing verification requirement, to our own credit card for account confirmation purposes. My wife's name is Diane and we had been married for 9 years, and I want to describe the specific process of this discovery, reviewing our monthly credit card statement as I typically did for general household budget tracking, noticing a small unfamiliar charge I did not recognize, initially assuming this might represent some kind of billing error or unauthorized charge requiring dispute. I want to describe what I found once I contacted this subscription service directly to inquire about the charge, learning that this represented a gift subscription originally purchased and ongoing paid for by someone else entirely, but that had apparently required our credit card information at some point for account verification purposes when Diane herself had called to update the shipping address or make some other account modification, information that immediately raised significant questions about who had originally purchased this ongoing gift subscription, and why Diane had apparently been managing account details for a subscription technically paid for by someone else. I want to describe the process of investigating this further before confronting Diane directly, contacting the subscription company again to request whatever information they could provide about the original account holder who had established this gift subscription, learning, through this additional inquiry, a name I did not recognize as belonging to anyone in our social circle, information that led me to do additional research, eventually finding this person's social media presence and discovering he worked at the same company as Diane in a different department. Update 4 months later. Diane's affair, once confronted with this evidence, had been ongoing for approximately 14 months, this monthly gift subscription apparently representing one small, ongoing gesture within what had developed into a considerably more significant relationship over this extended period. I filed for divorce shortly after this discovery, and I have found myself explaining to several friends the genuinely unusual, mundane mechanism through which this affair was ultimately revealed, a small, recurring subscription charge that most people might have simply dismissed or overlooked entirely, understanding that this specific detail, something as ordinary as a billing verification requirement, ultimately unraveled 14 months of careful concealment that had otherwise apparently avoided any more obvious detection method throughout its entire duration. Marcus found 14 months hidden in a subscription charge. Our third story tonight is about a discovery that came through something far more direct. A pharmacy pickup notification. For medication neither of them had ever discussed. My name is Rebecca. I am 38 years old, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and 6 months ago I received a pharmacy notification text on our shared family account, confirming a prescription pickup for a name I did not recognize, using our family insurance plan, revealing once I investigated this discrepancy, that my husband had apparently been managing prescription coverage for another woman under our own family insurance for approximately 2 years. My husband's name is Jonathan, and we had been married for 14 years, and I want to describe the specific circumstances of this discovery, receiving this routine automated text notification, initially assuming it must represent some kind of pharmacy system error given that the name listed bore no relationship to anyone in our immediate family, prompting me to call our pharmacy directly to inquire about what I assumed must be a simple mistake requiring correction. I want to describe what I learned once I actually spoke with our pharmacy's office manager, discovering that this name had indeed been associated with our family insurance account for approximately 2 years, with Jonathan apparently having added this person as a covered dependent at some point, information that immediately raised serious questions given that our insurance plan's dependent coverage should have been limited to our own legal children and myself as his spouse, meaning this addition represented either a significant insurance fraud issue or, more likely given the circumstances, evidence of some kind of relationship serious enough that Jonathan had apparently taken active steps to provide this woman with actual medical insurance benefits through our own family plan. I want to describe the confrontation that followed once I had gathered this information, presenting Jonathan with what the pharmacy had confirmed, watching him move through initial shock at being confronted with this specific evidence before eventually acknowledging that yes, he had indeed added this woman, someone he had been in an ongoing relationship with for approximately 2 years, to our family insurance plan, providing what he characterized as a somewhat elaborate but seemingly effective cover story about her being a distant cousin requiring temporary coverage assistance during a difficult employment transition. Update 4 months later. Jonathan's affair, once fully revealed, had indeed been ongoing for the full 2 years reflected in this insurance coverage timeline, and the fraudulent addition of this woman to our family plan created significant additional legal complications beyond the affair itself, requiring consultation with both our divorce attorney and an insurance fraud specialist. Given the genuine legal exposure this created for our family regarding potentially fraudulent insurance claims made on Jonathan's behalf. For someone who did not legitimately qualify as a covered dependent under our actual policy terms, I filed for divorce immediately following this discovery, and our proceedings have become considerably more complex than a typical separation given these additional insurance fraud implications, a process that continues working through both the emotional betrayal itself and the genuine legal and financial consequences this specific method of maintaining the affair has created for both Jonathan individually and our broader family finances. Jonathan's insurance fraud added 2 years of legal complications to his betrayal. Our fourth story tonight is about a discovery that came through. Something with no legal complications at all. Just a child's drawing brought home from school. Wait, let that sink in. Here is what happened. My name is Amanda. I am 34 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado, and 5 months ago my 7-year-old daughter brought home a family portrait assignment from school, drawing what she labeled as our family, but including 4 figures rather than our actual family of 3, with the 4th figure labeled in her careful, developing handwriting, with a woman's name I did not recognize, positioned specifically next to her father in the drawing's composition. I want to describe the specific moment I noticed this discrepancy, reviewing my daughter's schoolwork as I typically did each evening, initially finding this family portrait charming before actually reading the label she had carefully written beneath each figure, discovering this unfamiliar 4th name positioned specifically beside her father rather than anywhere suggesting she represented a friend, teacher, or other unrelated figure, who might have simply been included as part of a broader, less literal interpretation of the assignment. I want to describe what I did once I noticed this specific detail, asking my daughter gently, during our regular bedtime routine, who this 4th person in her drawing represented, watching her respond with the simple, unguarded honesty children often bring to such questions, explaining that this was Daddy's friend who sometimes picked her up from her father's apartment when she stayed with him during his custody time, information that immediately concerned me given that I had no previous knowledge of any regular female presence during Jonathan's parenting time that would warrant inclusion in our daughter's spontaneous family portrait. I want to describe the process of gathering additional information from my daughter, careful not to lead her toward any particular answer but genuinely curious about the actual frequency and nature of this woman's presence during her father's custody periods, learning, through her simple, consistent account, that this woman had apparently been present during a significant portion of her overnight visits with her father over recent months, sometimes staying overnight herself based on my daughter's description of morning breakfast routines that included this woman's regular presence. Update 4 months later. I confronted Jonathan directly with what our daughter had shared, and he eventually acknowledged that he had indeed been in a relationship with this woman for approximately 5 months, a relationship he had chosen not to disclose to me despite her clearly significant, regular presence during his custody time with our daughter, a decision that raised its own separate concerns beyond any question of infidelity given that Jonathan and I had already been divorced for 2 years at the time of this discovery. meaning this situation represented less about marital betrayal and more about his failure to properly communicate about significant new relationships affecting our daughter's experience during his parenting time. We have since worked through our family court system to establish clearer expectations about introducing new partners to our daughter, ensuring both Jonathan and I maintain appropriate transparency about significant relationships that affect her regular experience during either parent's custody time, a resolution that, while not addressing any marital infidelity given our already completed divorce, has helped establish healthier co-parenting communication going forward. A 7-year-old's honest crayon drawing revealed what months of conversation never had. Our final story tonight, Story 5, is about a discovery that also came through complete, unguarded honesty, but this time it came from a voice assistant that had been listening the entire time. This is the last story. Here is what happened. My name is Christina. I am 37 years old. I live in Austin, Texas, and 4 months ago I discovered my husband's affair through our home smart speaker system's voice command history. Reviewing this log purely out of curiosity after reading an article about smart home privacy, finding a consistent pattern of late-night voice commands requesting the device to call a specific contact, occurring regularly at times when I had always believed my husband was already asleep beside me. My husband's name is Daniel, and we had been married for 11 years, and I want to describe the specific process of this discovery. Reading an unrelated article about smart home device privacy that prompted my own curiosity about what data our own household devices might be logging, deciding to review our smart speaker's voice command history purely as a general privacy check, rather than out of any specific suspicion. I want to describe what I found once I actually accessed this history log, discovering a consistent pattern of voice commands, always occurring between approximately 1 and 2 in the morning, always requesting the device to place a call to the same saved contact, a pattern spanning several months that I had absolutely no previous awareness of, having always believed Daniel remained asleep beside me throughout these specific overnight hours based on my own general sleep patterns and assumptions about his typical nighttime behavior. I want to describe the specific horror of understanding this pattern, recognizing that Daniel had apparently been getting up during these consistent overnight hours, using our own smart speaker specifically because it provided hands-free calling that would not require him to risk waking me by manually operating his phone, a level of deliberate care that suggested genuine, sustained effort to avoid detection throughout what the timestamp history confirmed was several consistent months of this pattern. Update. 4 months later. Daniel's affair, once confronted with this voice command history, had indeed been ongoing for approximately 5 months, conducted specifically through these careful overnight phone calls with a woman he had met through an online community, using our own smart speaker's hands-free functionality specifically to minimize any risk of accidentally waking me during these regular calls. I filed for divorce within the following weeks, and I have found myself somewhat grimly appreciating the strange irony of smart home technology, originally purchased simply for household convenience, ultimately providing the exact evidence needed to reveal months of careful, deliberate deception that Daniel had apparently believed remained completely undetected throughout this entire period, never considering that the very device he was using specifically to avoid waking me would maintain such a clear time-stamped record of his own late-night activity. That's all 5 stories tonight. If any of these hit close to home, let me know in the comments below. If you want more stories like this, every single day, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. A like helps YouTube show this to more people who might need to hear. Tomorrow's video has a story that might be the most shocking one yet. So make sure you're subscribed. Thank you for watching.